Coming up on Tech News Today, Dotcom trolls the United States, AMD teams up with Android, and the future of television may not be in Apple's hands after all. All that and more coming up.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
Properly introduced. This is Tech News Today for Thursday, September 27th, 2012. Tech News Today is brought to you by Squarespace. The new Squarespace introduces a new content management system, making it faster and easier to create a high-quality website or blog. Plus more than 50 new features, including mobile responsive designs. For a free trial and 10% off your first purchase, go to squarespace.com and use offer code TNT9. And by FreshBooks, the easy online invoicing app for small businesses that saves time and gets you paid faster. Join over 3.5 million FreshBooks users and try the service free for 30 days of unlimited use at freshbooks.com. Be sure to let them know you heard about it on Tech News Today. And by Gazelle, the fast and simple way to sell iPhone, iPad, MacBook, or Android smartphones. Find out what your gadget is worth and get cash to upgrade to the latest iPhone at Gazelle.com. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Tom Merritt.
I'm Sarah Lane.
I'm Iyaz Akhtar.
I'm Jason Howell.
And we are all here to help you understand the world of technology news, starting with the top 10 stories of the day in the News Fuse.
Oh, it didn't work.
In the News Fuse.
There we go.
Go News Fuse.
Go News Fuse. Woo.
Speaking of battles, when the battle started that I'm about to tell you about, Firefox was called Mozilla Phoenix. Windows XP hadn't launched yet. And Concords still flew the skies. That's how long the European Commission has been fighting with Microsoft. EU Competition Commissioner Joaquin Almunia said Thursday that the EC is preparing to file formal charges against Microsoft for not properly following the browser choice requirements for Windows. Microsoft acknowledges the mistake and blamed a technical glitch, i.e. market share in Europe, has been cut in half since 2008.
Angry Birds, you know, little app. A few people liked it. A few people played it. Officially has a sequel, and it's called Bad Piggies. Comes at a time when the app maker Rovio's revenue has kind of hit the skids. And another recent app from the company, Amazing Alex, hasn't had a fraction of the success that Angry Birds has had. In its defense, no app has. But fans of the birds will probably like the piggies, too. Levels are somewhat similar, not too challenging. Still a mentally challenged game, though, in terms of physics. Bad Piggies is in Apple's App Store and Google Play Store for 99 cents.
If their follow-up was Angry Alex, it would have been fine. I lost this pick. Sorry, but not every baseball player. BlueStacks and AMD have joined up to bring 500,000 Android apps to AMD-powered Windows machines. Now, BlueStacks has optimized its software for AMD machines, and AMD has rolled out the App Zone to find apps. BlueStacks says the companies are also in negotiations to bring App Zone preloaded to HP machines running on AMD chips.
New Zealand Prime Minister John Key apologized to Dotcom and the people of New Zealand for mistakes made by the GCSB, the government's intelligence arm. In preparation to raid Dotcom's home, surveillance was conducted under the assumption that Dotcom had not completed his residency requirements. Dotcom and his associate Bram van der Kolk were legal residents, making the surveillance unlawful.
Multiple sources tell All Things D that Apple was forced to replace Google Maps with its own Maps app because of the lack of voice-guided turn-by-turn driving directions in the iOS version. Didn't we just say that yesterday? Yeah, sources are agreeing with us. Apple apparently pushed Google hard to provide that data it needed to bring that nav to iOS. Google said, well, we'd like more control too. Like, how about in-app branding? And Apple said, no. Google said, what about Google Latitude? And Apple said, no. Apple was also concerned that Google was gathering too much user data from the app. So long story short, they're not friends anymore. They're not going to be invited to each other's birthdays. They're not going to play together on the schoolyard. It's over.
Wait, does something happen with Maps? I totally missed it. It's now time to play everyone's favorite game. What will the latest Nokia Lumia phones cost at launch? Anybody?
648 euros.
$9 million.
Okay, well, you're both wrong. If you said the 920 would cost 649 euros.
I said it. My mic was off. Sorry.
And the 820 would cost 499 euros. Then I'd say you're totally right. They're also going to launch in November. Want to guess the date? Anybody? Well, we don't have that information.
November
November
32nd.
The day with the number.
Valve announced another step towards making the Steam video game service available to Linux users. Valve's Linux blog announced an internal beta will start next week, and a private external beta for 1,000 lucky users will follow sometime in October. The external beta will include Steam, one game, and support for Ubuntu 12.04 and up.
Yesterday, some Facebook business page admins started noticing that they were losing thousands of fans just like that. And they were panicking. Facebook told TechCrunch actually, it's currently just purging fake accounts and page likes as it rolls out new site integrity improvements that it announced it would start doing last month. So, for example, Zynga's Texas Hold'em Poker fan page dropped by 96,000 likes after a long, steady growth. So illegitimately created accounts are being deleted. Likes that are gained from malware are being deleted. Compromised accounts or deceived users are being removed. So you might be taking it personally, but you really shouldn't. They weren't real anyway.
Yeah, you're not actually less popular.
No.
You're less popular with fake things.
Right.
Terabit Ethernet sounds kind of drool-worthy, doesn't it? But the IEEE 802.3 Industry Connections Higher Speed Ethernet Consensus Group says their name is too long and Terabit Ethernet is too expensive and impractical at this point. According to Slashdot, 61 of the 62 attendees at the group's meeting voted in favor of 400 gigabits per second as the basis for the near-term CFI, or call for interest. This kicks Terabit Ethernet down the road a few years, 3 to 6 years probably.
That's very depressing. Well, tired of passwords? Sure, we all are. And Mozilla's been trying to help. For the past year, Mozilla has been working on an experimental login system that completely eliminates passwords on websites while being safe, secure, and easy to use. In a blog post today, Mozilla officially put the program, called Persona, into beta. Participating websites can now access the core API, which is ready for authentication in all major smartphone, tablet, and desktop browsers. Thanks to Strengths in the chat room for tipping us off to the launch.
Yeah, thanks for that, Strengths. Good stuff. Let's take a break and thank our sponsor for today's show, Squarespace, the new Squarespace.com. Now, you may be sitting out there looking at some brilliant-looking websites and saying, I could never do that. I have a great idea for a website, but if I put it up, it would look like something Tom Merritt would design. And that might be true unless you use the new Squarespace. That's how my website actually looks decent. I have no design skills whatsoever, but the new Squarespace makes it easier than ever to create a high-quality website or blog that looks gorgeous. You just use one of their templates, and the best part, it's going to look right no matter what device somebody's looking at your website on, because they automatically resize images and redo the template to look perfect on whatever device your website is being accessed with. So go try it out. Try their social plugins, try their Flickr plugins, use the gallery, mess around with it, maybe import your alt blog, see how reliable it is, enjoy the 24/7 support, and you don't even have to give them a credit card to try it out. If you do decide to keep it, though, check this out. You get 10% off your first purchase on new accounts with the offer code TNT9. That's 10% off the first month if you sign up for a monthly renewal, or if you pay for a year at once, you get 10% off the entire year, and with a year, you get a free domain name. You got to give the new Squarespace a spin. Even if you tried the old Squarespace a long time ago and you're not on it anymore, go give the new Squarespace a whirl, because they've done amazing things to make it so much easier to make a good-looking website. Try it out, squarespace.com, and if you do decide to purchase, use that offer code TNT9 to save 10%. And we thank Squarespace for their support of Tech News Today. Also supporting us by getting up early in the morning after a late night is Paul Spain of the New Zealand Tech Podcast. How's it going, Paul?
Going really well, thanks. Going really well.
I'm glad you're able to make it today. I know that the iPhone 5 launch in New Zealand happened yesterday. It went a little later than you thought.
Yeah, that was about 5 hours ago. There was launches here in Auckland and around the country with our two main telcos here, Vodafone New Zealand and Telecom New Zealand. So they were holding parties in the city.
Big long lines and stuff?
Well, in the scheme of things, maybe it's big for New Zealand. There was between probably 100 to 200 people buying iPhones at both those events, but in some parts of the country, the queues were down to as few as 20 people. No sheep? Well,
and no sheep in line, I mean, buying iPhones. Probably not. All right, we got a New Zealand story to kick us off today. Let's start by talking about your Prime Minister, John Key, who apologized to you, Paul, and actually all of the New Zealand citizens. He said, I apologize to Mr. Dotcom, referring to Kim Dotcom of Mega Upload. I apologize to New Zealanders because every New Zealander is entitled to be protected from the law when it comes to the GCSB, and we failed to provide that appropriate protection for him.
That must have been a tough quote to get out.
It's long.
Sorry, Kim.com.
Sorry, Kim. Well, that's my question, Paul. The reason for this apology is that, once again, the legal system has turned out that things were not followed properly. There was an improper search warrant that we talked about back in the summer. Now they're saying that surveillance shouldn't have been allowed in this case because he was legally a resident of New Zealand, and he should be protected from this kind of surveillance that foreign nationals are not protected from. Is Kim.com perceived? How is Kim.com perceived in New Zealand, Paul?
He's perceived pretty well here now. I think he's done a great job, particularly in his use of Twitter. But yeah, he's really been getting getting his profile out there and I guess challenging some of the things that have been in the media previously. And of course, as we've seen. With this and some of the other things over the last few months, things are starting to really turn in his direction now.
Surveillance of Dotcom was done before the raid, and New Zealand's Inspector General of Intelligence and Security, Paul Nizor, found that the service did indeed wrongfully spy on Dotcom. Meanwhile, Dotcom is planning to launch a new service. We talked about it yesterday, and the U.S. is still seeking extradition. Dotcom took to Twitter following the apology from Prime Minister Key and called on President Obama of the U.S. to, quote, be good, fix the Mega Upload mess, be the internet hero, win another term with Mega users, and I help Hollywood. So the president can win re-election just by calling off the extradition.
And Kim.com will help Hollywood make so much more money.
That's right.
That's what Mega Upload is all about, right?
Yeah.
It's helping the institution.
Was the iPhone 5 or was Kim.com the bigger news in New Zealand, do you think?
Kim.com was definitely the headline news here yesterday. And I think rightfully so. I mean, what happened here was a pretty major breach, and it's somewhat understandable what happened because there was a change in the law and the rules that surrounded how the GCSB could operate. But yeah, pretty inexcusable, really. Operating at that sort of level, they should understand, know the rules, and get the information right on who they're picking to spy on. And in this case, they were well off track.
And the thing is, Kim.com is probably in many ways the right guy for the industry to pick on, because Mega Upload definitely was skating the line of legality, and we can argue about which side of the line they were on. A lot of people feel he was definitely on the wrong side of the law, and he obviously has some trolly behavior here. He seems to be trolling President Obama here by saying you'll get reelected.
Taunting. A lot of taunting has been going on the last few years.
And so he's not necessarily a sympathetic figure from the get-go, but Paul, I think it's interesting what you're saying. He's become a very sympathetic figure because they were too heavy-handed. They were so heavy-handed, and they made all these legal mistakes that people now feel like, well, this guy got a raw deal.
And he's also he's aligned himself with some of the other causes out there online, and so yeah, I guess he's encouraging people to jump on board and support him in the same way people are supporting Julian Assange and some of these other characters that I guess it's been hard to place for some, but others are have been very supportive of them. And there's growing groundswell of support for him across the country here, I believe.
Now, that probably means that he's not going to get extradited, would be my guess. And the U.S. hasn't given that up, but they're still going to try to pursue this. But it may be a lost cause, and that may have ramifications for how willing or able the government and the industry are in pulling off these sorts of raids and enforcements in the future. We'll have to see. Meanwhile, we got some chip news. AMD is still in the game. They're still making chips. They're still out there pushing it, trying to catch intel. That's
pretty harsh. Yeah, well, AMD's been around for a while, and they're still around. They even set up the strategic partnership with BlueStacks. Now, I talked about this in the news fuse. The BlueStacks software is going to be a specially optimized version, and it's going to be tailored for AMD Radeon graphics, and it's going to let Android apps run as fast as if it was native on x86 systems. Now, BlueStacks is still going to work on Intel machines and everything else, but this is the kind of partnership that AMD needed to get on board with, because there's native support for AMD's OpenGL drivers. It's going to also have Cloud Connect. That means when you are using an app on your phone, you can sync it up with your actual PC display. So it's going to be somewhat of a seamless experience. And in the video announcing the deal, the apps will run fastest on AMD because it still runs on Intel. AMD, they have some money in this. They invested in BlueStacks back in 2011. But, I mean, there was another article from Ars Technica saying AMD may be facing irrelevance, because right now, when you look at their processors, the whole CPU side, not so hot. But the GPU is actually still pretty strong. That's the big difference between AMD's integrated system on a chip versus Intel systems on a chip, is that AMD's graphics just kill Intel's.
Because they bought Radeon, that's why.
They have that, and AMD, but AMD just does not have the computing power that Intel has. So the thing is, do you guys think that this is going to bring AMD an advantage in the Windows 8 space? Because, I mean, the app selection in Windows 8 is kind of small. It's rumored to be around 2,000. By having 500,000 applications possibly pre-installed on your AMD, not pre-installed, but available on your AMD machine, you think manufacturers would move towards AMD?
I think that's probably a little bit, but not enough to make a big difference in this so-called post-PC era. The big thing that Intel's trying to do, which Intel's in definitively a leading position in this market, is trying to get into the mobile game, because they realize that if they sit on their haunches making desktop and laptop chips, they're going to get left behind by Qualcomm and by even Samsung and others. So they're aggressively going after mobile. And if this is AMD's mobile strategy, I don't want to pick on it. It's not a bad strategy to incorporate BlueStacks and say, hey, your mobile devices now work easier with your desktops. That's compelling. But what else are they doing in the mobile space? I'm not seeing anything about that.
Paul, do you think Intel needs to do any moves? I mean, they're working, obviously, to get in the mobile space. They do have a phone, the Razer I, is running Android. I believe Chrome just came out for that version of Android. Do you think Intel needs to kind of step up and go, hey, look, by the way, we also run Android. We can make something work on our side?
Well, they're certainly investing into the mobile space, and they're feeling the heat there. But I don't think what AMD are doing here is probably going to have them too worried about the situation. I think when we look at what's coming through with Windows 8, there are a lot of Intel devices. Most of the devices that we've heard announced are Intel based. There's very little coming from the AMD direction, from what we're hearing. Of course, there's the ARM based RT tablets, but we're seeing Intel come out with both the Intel Core. And of course, their lower-end Atom processors coming through on Windows 8. So, yeah, I don't think they've got anything to be too worried about. Certainly for the next sort of 12 to 18 months or so, their products are just doing so strongly.
AMD's in a really weird position because there is that ARM-based Windows machines out there, and there's Intel. So the AMD is somewhere smack in the middle when it comes to pricing. So they need something to say, hey, look, we're different. We can run desktop applications, and we have these optimized. Because if you're going to do gaming on a tablet, let's say an ARM tablet, you might not have the same kind of performance. But if you have AMD there, maybe. But they're in a very horrible limbo between this super cheap RT and then the x86.
Yeah, I don't see a lot of people making a purchase decision being swayed by better BlueStacks. I mean, you can run BlueStacks on an Intel machine. So it's like, but it works better. It's got this extra feature, which is cool. Don't get me wrong. I think this is actually brilliant what they're doing, but it's icing, and I'm not sure anybody wants the cake.
And if they can get the actual deal, because the negotiations between BlueStacks, AMD, and HP, if it's pre-installed, I think that might be their best bet. Having the partnership is one thing, but if you can have an AMD HP machine that says, look, that's got the access to apps that other machines don't, they have a better chance.
And I'm not meaning to bash AMD here. I think what they're doing in the desktop and PC space is very good. I think they're making great chips. The chips they're unveiling are compelling. They're putting i5 performance into a chip that costs the same as an i3. So they're doing all the things that AMD is good at, and they're getting back into the game in a way that they haven't been in a while. It's just whether this is the right game for them to be in is the only thing I'm I'm questioning here. But I love this. Another game that we'd like to see more competitors in is internet provision. Here in the United States, Dish is launching a national satellite broadband service.
Yeah, I guess that's a little close to home for me. I used to live in Vermont, and getting service was not exactly super easy. I mean, we didn't have the iPhone for a couple of years because didn't have AT&T up there. Anyway, wireless internet from space. So we got Dish introducing DishNet. It's its internet offerings. For $40, you get 5 megabits down, 1 megabit up, and it's a 10 gigabyte cap. For most satellite customers, you can upgrade to 10 megabits down and 1 megabit up. Available with a 20 gigabyte cap, $50 a month. And if you bundle it with the television service, you get $10 off. Now, availability is a little different. It's in rural and outlying suburban regions nationwide. So it's not like every which way you can go into the city and go get DishNet. But if you're out in the sticks, like I used to be, you might be interested in something like this. This was rumored back in August. There was a lot of murmurs, oh, they're working on something. And these plans seem somewhat affordable. $40 for 5 megabits is pretty good. What are your impressions of the plans? Because, I mean, either you go with something like this or you have to tether to your cell phone, possibly in these areas, or you're stuck on some awful dial-up. I think it's a great first step, and I'm hoping there's a lot more competition in this field. But what do you think of the plans?
I mean, for $40, you said 5 megabits down is pretty good. But for $50, you get 10 megabits down, which is, I mean, it's not like it's double the amount that you're paying per month. I mean, that looks like the sweeter deal to me.
It definitely seems like a good deal. But I was just surprised about this because the old days when you wanted satellite internet, it was super expensive, and you were not getting anywhere near these speeds. So to get 5 megabits in rural areas, where this is not a very well-served area, by the way. If you live out, again, I'm going to say Vermont. If you live in Vermont, you know that this is very hard to get these kinds of speeds. And people are not rolling out fiber like they used to. Verizon stopped doing that. And we have the FCC trying very hard to get more and more broadband penetration. And this, at 5 megabits, I'm just surprised they can get 5 megabits. Although, I'm kind of concerned because when it starts raining too heavily, you might lose internet connections because
that's a canard. I mean, my sister's had DirecTV out in the sticks for quite a long time, and it thunderstorms like crazy in southern Illinois. She almost never loses her TV service. Like, she loses her TV service because of rain much less than you lose your Comcast cable or internet service just because they messed something up on a pole somewhere. So I'm not too worried about that kind of thing.
Paul, do you got anything like this in New Zealand where we got internet from space for your own dish?
Well, in addition to the fibre that the government have been rolling out, or have just started rolling out around the country over the last sort of 12 months, they've also kicked off a rural broadband initiative, and that's focused on using 3G to deliver to rural residents. The 5 megabits that's talked about here, that's their sort of their base speed. I guess the challenge when I look at these plans is that they're capped at 10 gigs or 20 gigs worth of data. So that's similar sort of challenges that we're seeing here in New Zealand in those rural situations. It's hard to give really big data caps. And looking at Dish's offering, because it's coming over satellite, we're going to have slow ping times. So yeah, that obviously has some implications for using certain applications such as Skype and gaming. So there's some downsides to it, but it's great to see the offering coming into the market, and the pricing looks similar to what we're seeing in New Zealand and other parts of the world for these types of rural broadband offerings.
That was actually the biggest thing that disappointed me about this plan was that it's got data caps on it. I mean, we did a whole special back in the summer about how data caps are pretty much a lie and just a way to try to charge you for more money. And I think it's ridiculous that they're putting these data caps in a situation where people can barely use any data to begin with. And then you slap them with a data cap. But I'm pretty disappointed with this. And as you said, maybe it's a first step. And then maybe that's the way I should look at it. Because as a first step, it's not bad. But I had my hopes pinned on Dish sort of maybe filling in the space that Light Squared wasn't able to when their whole business plan fell apart, and blanketing the entire country with LTE type speeds. Kind of what they're doing here, I guess, but it seems really only compelling if I'm out in a rural area. If I'm looking at this compared to the cable and telephone company internet services that are offered in the city, this doesn't compete at all. There's no reason I'd go for it.
I guess the way I'm looking at this is because you're in a rural area, I've been like price gouged out there because there's only so many options. The other thing is if you're going to go with a cell phone service as an alternative and tether to your phone, these are way more competitive
Yep.
at these speeds and these prices. Because otherwise, let's say you get Verizon LTE, it could cost you something more like $100 a month, and you still have a cap, and you probably have a higher upload speed. But it's definitely at this. I was really intrigued by the value proposition and the fact that the rural areas are going to be served.
Yeah, decent prices. Just lose the caps. You don't need them. Let's take a break. This episode brought to you by FreshBooks.com. If you're in business for yourself, you do freelancing, any kind of stuff where you need to invoice, you know that the only reason you do your invoicing is because you need to get paid. There's nothing else fun about doing invoicing. And FreshBooks takes the pain out of it, so the getting paid part is really all you're worried about. You just put in how much you worked, how much they owe, email address. They'll send it off to the person and follow up. They'll make sure that you get paid on time. They'll make sure you know who owes you money, and they make it easy for your clients to pay you. They pay from credit card right from the email as well. It is definitely eased our pain at Sword & Laser LLC with all of the contractors we work with. We can use this to invoice. Just makes life a whole lot easier, and your accountant's going to love you around tax time too, because it gives you reports that make it easy for them to figure out your tax burden. Automated late payment reminders, follow up with clients. If you want to send physical invoices, they even have an option for that too, for a little extra money. So go try it out. You can set up an entire business with all of your staff, all of your clients, everything for free for 30 days just by signing up at FreshBooks.com. Join 3.5 million FreshBooks users that have been sending and paying invoices at FreshBooks.com, including myself. And you can try it for free by going to FreshBooks.com. And, you know, if you're in that part where they say, how'd you hear about FreshBooks, kind of let them know you heard about it from Tech News Today. And we thank FreshBooks for their support of Tech News Today. Got a lot of TV stories to talk about today. Let's start with this NPD survey. 45% of consumers now use their television set as the primary way they watch web video. So this is not saying they watch web video primarily. They're saying if you're going to sit down and watch Hulu or Netflix or YouTube, you're primarily doing it on an actual television rather than a PC, which is now in second place at 31%, or a tablet or a phone, which is like at 1%.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I mean, your TV is more likely
too, so you're used to that.
Yeah, so I have limited options as far as watching TV at all. But your TV is more likely to be the focal point of your living room, or the place where you've got your nice comfortable couch and you can kind of get settled in and you just want to watch that stuff on the TV that's already there. So I think a lot of it just has to do with the way that some people's living rooms and, you know, viewing areas are set up, and the fact that it's with all of the apps that we have. Hulu Plus, for example, I go through Roku, or I can go through my Apple TV now. I have both of those set-top boxes with my TV, so it doesn't really make sense for me to use my laptop unless for some reason I was traveling and I really wanted to watch something and I wasn't at home.
A wide variety of services competing here, too. I was surprised. Netflix is number one for watchers of online video on your television, but only at 12% of the people. Hulu Plus, 4%. Netflix was 40%. And then Hulu Plus was 12% and Vudu 4%. That means 60% watching something else. So there's a wide variety of stuff being watched out there.
Does this account for airplaying something like a YouTube video to your TV at all? Because I know I do that quite a bit.
I would assume so. Good question. But yes.
So that's not really platform, you know, it's
they did
sort of
mention that YouTube
agnostic.
was mentioned. It was just mentioned less than Vudu. They're not watching a bunch of YouTube videos yet. They're not catching on to that. Also, 22% of people surveyed don't view online video on any device. In other words, they're like, I don't watch video at all. So it's this weird system where the people who are watching online video are really doing it up. You know, they're subscribing to a service like Netflix. They're watching it on their television. They are far down the road of replacing their cable. They're 62% of them use a box like a Roku or an Apple TV. 47% use a game console for this. But yet there's still 22% of the people surveyed who just like, I never watch video on the web ever.
Well, I mean, this seems like it's just showing, it's reflecting the trend that every device has multiple functions. If you get a Blu-ray player, it might have access to Netflix or Hulu or Vudu or any of those services. Your television has it built in at this point. I could see some people who have smart televisions going, I'm not going to hook it up. I'm not going to do Wi-Fi during it. I'm not going to bother to hook up an Ethernet cable to that. That's my monitor. That's my TV. That's what I use it for. But it just seems like every device at this point has this extra functionality built in. It's almost kind of like you're kind of bored with what's on television. Like, what else do I have as an option? And it's interesting to see that people are using their TVs this way. I mean, I've been using my TV. I've hooked up a PC to my TV since, I don't know, 2003, and it's been pretty hideous. So I'm really glad that the market is mature enough that there's enough content that you actually want to watch this stuff on television. It used to be that you'd watch a YouTube video is 360 by like 240, and you're watching this on your 27-inch TV. You're like, that's disgusting. I can't.
You're trying
watch
to
this.
mess with Media Center and get it to fix, and the resolution would pop
Put a
out.
plug-in in, and then it gets broken. But
I remember those.
It's so interesting to finally see
38%
this.
of the people still using a computer wired to a television.
Well, that's the only way you can see every piece of web content, because otherwise you get shut out. Because Roku, if you're not together with Comcast on something, won't work with this X, Y, Z service. And you're like, oh, come on. It's so silly. That's why I still think a PC is the way to go. But this is just showing that every device is connected, and there's so much more high-quality content to view.
I think that's part of the reason that the numbers are so high of people who just don't watch web video at all, is that they don't realize that there is high-quality content out there. I know some people go like, YouTube, yeah, I mean, that's amateur stuff.
That's cats on skateboards still,
Yeah,
right?
I could upload
It's like
something to
swords and
YouTube,
lasers, right?
and it's
Like,
shaky, and it's not
amateur
well
stuff, right.
produced.
Thanks, man.
So I think that, yeah, we're still maybe, a couple of years out from the general public, people who like to watch episodic stuff that's well produced, realizing, oh, it's not just coming from NBC or coming from some cable network that has a good reputation. It can come from a lot of places because the tools to make good quality content are cheaper.
Paul, do you know a lot of people who are watching web video on their television?
Yeah, it's becoming more and more common, and I think because, as Iyaz pointed out, we're seeing so many more devices now that can easily display web video. All the new TVs have got, they're effectively smart TVs to some degree. Apple TV is such a low-cost device, as with Roku and the like. So the entry cost now is very, very low or zero if people have it in the devices that they've already got, such as Xboxes and Blu-ray players and so on. Looking at that 22% that aren't viewing anything on their device, I think that's quite interesting. My pick is it's a reflection of the audience that doesn't have good enough connections, broadband connections to deliver video well as those who just haven't seen a need to jump in and try it out. Maybe it's still a little bit too technical for them, but I think that number will shrink away more and more as time goes on. We're really heading to a world where our television and video content is delivered over IP.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, people still are on dial-up. It's hard to believe, but they, AOL has a subscriber number for their dial-up service out there. So those people are probably not watching a whole lot of video. I miss those days in a way.
I don't.
Meanwhile, while all these people are watching TV connected, the industry is trying, the television industry is trying to get that second screen. They really want to sell you advertising on your tablet while you're watching a TV show, and new service is coming over to the U.S. from the U.K. to try to get you to do that.
Yeah, it's called Z-Box, and what Tom obviously means by second screen is you're watching TV, you're watching something on your TV, but you've got your laptop in your lap, or maybe you're holding your tablet, or you're on your phone, and you're kind of doing something else at the same time, because we all like to multitask, even when we're supposed to be vegging out now. So second screen apps, there are a lot of them. GetGlue is probably the one I can remember coming first, at least that had the most traction. Into Now from Yahoo is another. A variety of apps that are sort of companions to a TV channel or a TV service sometimes have second screen functionality. In fact, on iPad Today a few weeks ago, I showed off the WWE app that has a certain second screen functionality when a certain show is playing on Monday nights, for example. Z-Box is a little bit different. Not only has it already been used in the UK with somewhat wide adoption, coming to the US today, but it is officially backed by NBC Universal and Comcast. So it's not just a few developers making something that they think, hey, people are kind of distracted. Why not make a cool second screen app that will tell you a little bit more about the show that you're watching when you're watching it live, and attempt to, let you know more about that music that's going on in the show, or a certain actor, what they've been in before. This is marketing push on NBC shows. This is maybe Z-Box integration on reality shows like, You know, all things
Honey
D.
Boo Boo.
All things D said. You know, the voice, for example. Yeah, Honey Boo Boo. Right. Yeah. All of their properties. No, but something like, hey, it's time to vote, or go on to ZBox right now and see what other people are
Download
talking
the
about.
performance, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. The problem is that ZBox, okay, they've got a little bit more of a push from the big guys. But that also makes it less cool to me right off the bat. You're going to see a lot of advertising. You know, these are apps not made because NBC says, hey, we know you're not paying as much attention, so we're just going to make this really fun game for you to play at the same time, concurrently with our programming. It's, we want to keep you focused back on our programming. So if you are distracted and you are multitasking, then we still kind of keep you within our experience rather than trailing off into something else. So it's the sort of thing like if we're all watching the Emmys, right? So that's what I was doing last Sunday, and some people are tweeting about it, and you know, we're hashtagging it Emmys, but we're not always even hashtagging it at all. And it's like, if you're watching it, you know what I mean. If you're not watching it, then maybe you have no idea what I'm talking about, but you have sort of that live fun functionality thing that you're doing because we're sitting here with, you know, looking for something to do while we're watching the show. Something like ZBox would attempt to kind of control that fun. So we can still all talk about it, but we're...
And that's what we all want, isn't it?
Right, controlled fun. But that's the thing that bothers me about this is like, that's part of the fun, is that you do whatever you want to do and you use social networking when you're watching a show or something crazy happens in an organic way. And if I'm now saying I am sharing that I am watching the Emmys on NBC via ZBox and I tweet that, all of a sudden it's like, ugh, this is just sort of spammy stuff. I just don't see anything like this catching on, and I don't see it catching on a, you know, on a widespread basis, and I don't see a company like Comcast making me want to anymore.
Well, that's the whole problem with this, right? It's a mass media mentality, and I think I just figured out why they always do this. All of these industries grew up in an era where you didn't have a choice, right? They come from the time of 4 channels, and that's your choice. And so they could make you do things that you might not otherwise do because that's all you had to choose from. And they really want those days back, but they're gone. Mm-hmm. It is the era of the consumer saying, I want to do this, and I'm going to figure out how to do it with all of these options I have. And the second screen just smacks to me of saying, look, we really want you to watch TV this way, okay? Because we want to market to you. We want to sell you T-shirts, and we want to get you to buy downloads, and we want to get you to do things. So we're going to give you this thing that will make you do things. And people, I don't see anyone... And correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see anyone saying, boy, I really want a second screen app to go along with my TV watching.
Well, there are second screen apps. There are a handful of them.
No, I know they exist, but I don't see anybody who wants them.
Yeah, that's we're enough so that if somebody's using Get Glue, I understand what Get Glue does, and it's like, I'll use it if I want to. But there's not really that social pressure, like everybody's on Get Glue, everybody's watching this thing, because you just sort of watch what you want to watch. Well, it is kind of cool, I will say. Comcast says that later this year, it's not actually functional on ZBox now, but you will be able to use ZBox, the app, as an actual remote to control your Comcast cable, if of course you're a Comcast subscriber. That's kind of neat. So not only does it work as a guide and sort of a second screen for whatever you're watching, but it can sort of be a hub for everything. So not only...
DirecTV does that too.
Yeah.
With the DirecTV app. It is kind of cool.
I think that's sort of how you get people in, because people do want a smart TV guide, something that looks cool, something that you can control from one place. But again, yeah, I don't really need to be sold a T-shirt based on what that person was wearing in the episode of Desperate Housewives.
I think if there's enough mainstream push, like you're watching the Today Show, and they're like, ZBox, because it's like one of the most popular things on ZBox right now is Today Show. Like, it seems like I think a lot of that audience might be like, oh, I've never thought about using my tablet that way. Some people might be goofing around on the web doing things like this is what we do normally, right? But I don't think a lot of people even know that there's like a companion app for television. The guide's pretty good on ZBox in general. I could see it being interesting for when you're sitting at home, you're trying to watch TV, you found something on DirecTV, it's like, you know, the billion channels. You don't know what it is necessarily. You can look at the guide and find it, and then find these conversations that you might not have you probably would not have seen. I think this is not for like our audience, but for like the masses, because when you see...
But those people don't have tablets, or they don't use them as often.
Well, I
with the second screen, maybe on the smartphone. I don't know.
Just like when you start seeing the Shazam tags show up, like on mainstream ads, like for Old Navy, like these kinds of things.
This reminds me of web TV.
I could see that. It's just higher res.
Yeah.
But
participate in our live poll using your ZBox app. Everybody grab your tablets.
Yeah, the controlled fun aspect, I think, is going to not sell it to lots of people.
Paul, do you know of any of these second screen apps that are popular?
There doesn't seem to be a whole lot at the moment. I think what will be interesting is, as this develops a little bit more, I'm hoping the experience will become a little bit more enticing, and there'll be, really some reasons for us to jump on board and to want to use them. Maybe there also needs to be some sort of a standardization so that these apps can tie in with the set-top box that you're using. I saw some interesting work that was done by Microsoft in conjunction with Mitt Romney's presidential campaign, and they had an app that was sort of tracking what people were thinking of his speeches and what was going on. Now, in that sort of case, it was interesting to see that. So there's maybe some sort of way that could tie in with with the set-top box app that you're running for that type of content, and maybe there'll be other similar sort of situations for other content as well. I'm not sure how it ties into your everyday program, but maybe news programs and the like that becomes of more relevance.
All right, let's finish up real quickly with the Wall Street Journal column today saying Apple's done for.
Yeah, it's I had to read it a few times, but I think I get the general points. The author's main point is that Apple wants to control the TV industry and is going to fail and is basically just going to have to go back to the drawing board and concede that it can't change the industry the way that it changed the music industry. The author makes an interesting point, says video content owners, that's, TV networks, Hollywood, the NFL, Major League Baseball. This is not anything like the music industry. It's not anything like the book industry, something that Apple has been able to change. Video content owners aren't looking for a savior and ultimately won't be satisfied with anything less than an open ecosystem accessible by any device. Now, when I read that, I go, what? That's not right at all. I mean, they're looking to control. They don't want some open ecosystem. But the author's point is that these content owners don't want to say, okay, Apple, you've offered us some sort of an attractive pricing model. I understand that this is beneficial to you, but because we want to get it out to as many people as possible, it is also beneficial to us.
They don't want to get locked in the way the music industry did with iTunes.
And that's probably true. I'm not exactly sure what this open ecosystem accessible by any device would look like. Nobody's really laid that out yet. But the key point in this Wall Street Journal article is if Apple wants to maintain its position, the company has to focus more on giving its devices superb access to content that it doesn't control and that it hasn't approved. I'm sorry, but isn't that what Apple's already doing?
Yeah, that's what Apple is good at. I'm not saying it's going to work with television, but they double down on that every time, and they rarely fail.
I mean, look at the Z-Box app we were just talking about. It's like Apple has no control over that. That's something that was introduced to the App Store. It's designed to work on content that Apple has no control over. And it works out pretty well for the ecosystem.
The thing is, they want to control the interface. Time Warner Cable executive was saying that they want to control the interface, and the cable companies are fine with that, but the cable companies want to control the relationship with the viewers. That's what's holding this up. It has nothing to do with the openness of the model or any of the stuff that's in this article. It has to do with the same problem that they had with magazines and that they're having with bookstores, where they want to take 30% and they want to control all the subscriber information. Cable companies are not going to give them 30% of their subscription revenue, right. And they want to manage that relationship directly with the subscribers.
I don't know. Maybe I'm being naive here, but I feel like, okay, Apple hasn't figured out this TV thing, right? As much as Steve Jobs said that he supposedly solved it, more and more we hear that people are going to the table and they're walking away with no concrete plans as far as Apple and cable providers or content providers are concerned. But I don't understand how exactly not being able to figure this out, I don't know, in the next 12 months means that Apple is done for. Because Apple, they make hardware, they control quite a bit of the software experience, but if they don't figure out TV, they still have a model that's working out pretty well.
I thought the author's concern was that Apple would try to force a product that wasn't as good, referencing maps. Effectively, they didn't have to kill that relationship with Google. They try to go off into the video space and try to have some kind of mid-range experience that's not usually Apple. Apple wants to be disruptive, and if they kind of go, no, we want to get in TV, at any cost. That would be kind of crazy. That would be an undoing, because why would you start in a
Don't you
business
think
like
that's
that?
what the Apple TV is already doing, though?
Well, I think
They are getting into the TV market. I watch all sorts of stuff on
that's
my
why
Apple
it's
TV.
the hobby. That's why that's a great point. Like, it is just for Apple. That's not what it's not their disruptive device. It's just it's a $100 device. It's basically the device that makes you buy more things on iTunes. It's just like the Kindle Fire. It's like you buy this thing, you buy more content on it. It's a little revenue generator there. But I mean, the thing about television is that distribution medium was completely like established well before anything, and it's in everybody's house. Like, they brought cables to your house for television. Okay, now for music it was completely different. Like, it was the Wild West, and basically the music industry is just standing around going, "We're losing all our money. What are we going to do? What are we going to do?" Television companies are nowhere near that.
Yeah,
kind of stage.
they're not in the panic stage.
Yeah, and I don't know if they ever will be. And I don't know if they need to do this. And if Apple really, really wants to do this, they have to pay the same amount as cable companies and effectively act like TiVo. That's an idiotic game, because TiVo's playing the TiVo game, and that's not working for them. Why would Apple try that?
Yeah, I've always said Apple just needs to get one of these companies on board, and all the rest will eventually fall. But it's really hard to get one of those companies to be desperate enough to get on board. Let's move on to the randomizer.
Randomizer.
I hate to do this to you, but Google's Eric Schmidt met with Psy in Korea.
The Gangnam Style.
Yeah, we're not going to play the video or the music part of the video, but we could just, you pretty much just show the picture.
I prefer we don't play the music part of the video.
And you see what you expect,
okay.
which is Eric Schmidt doing the horse dance.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Make it stop.
Don't just.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Somebody.
That actually happened.
He's there, by the way, to meet with Samsung and plot the demise of all of the rest of the world.
Oh,
He's
but
there to boogie.
He's human. He dances like
he's like a real boy.
Paul, this is your half of the planet. What
we blame you.
Oh, I just don't know how to take this stuff. I don't know what he's up to.
That's why we call it randomizer, because sometimes there's just
don't know what you're going to get.
It's random.
It totally is. Let's take a quick break and thank our other sponsor for today's show, Gazelle.com. That iPhone 5 just launched in New Zealand. Paul was just telling you about it, and it's all available in lots of parts of the world. If you want to get some cash for new gadgets like that or any other kind of gadget, you want to maybe raise some cash with your old gadgets. Go in the garage. Find out if you got an old iPod you're not using in there. Maybe you've got a MacBook that you replaced and you don't know what to do with the old MacBook. Don't just recycle it. I mean, that is a responsible thing to do. Check and see if you can get some cash for it first, because it's no hassle. It's the simplest and easiest way to sell your used gadgets. You just go to Gazelle.com. You type in the name of the gadget. Sometimes you don't even have to type. You can just click. Tell them what condition it is in, what kind of accessories you've got with it. They'll give you a quote. And your quote is good for 30 days. So lock it in now. Even if you're like, I'm not sure, Tom. I'm not sure if I want to sell this or not. Go do it. Lock in that quote. Get that money down, because you don't have to sell it to them. You can just lock in that quote. It's not going to get more valuable over time. It's going to get less as time goes on. So lock in that quote right now, and then they'll let you print out a shipping label. And when you're ready to send it off, you send it off to Gazelle. And Gazelle's like, we don't care if you took the full 30 days. That's fine. We'll pay you fast. They can pay you by PayPal. They can pay you by check. They can pay you by Amazon gift certificate. So go there. Tell them you heard about it on Tech News Today. Gazelle.com, Gazelle.com. We thank them for their support of the show. Let's see what's on the calendar.
We got a birthday to celebrate. Happy birthday, Google. You were founded in 1998, and you are 14 years young.
Google has
Which
like
means your hormones are
16
raging.
birthdays.
That probably explains some of your missteps as of late.
And why they were dancing.
Right. You're fueled by hormones. BlackBerry Jam is wrapping up today. RIM's earnings are also coming out later on this afternoon. Tomorrow, September 28th, Europeans will be able to buy a 500-gigabyte redesigned PlayStation 3 with one of a number of bundled games for about €300. Also tomorrow, the FCC is set to vote on proposed auctioning of UHF spectrum. And finally, if you're a Cricket customer and you want that iPhone 5, good news, the iPhone 5 is coming to you tomorrow as well.
Very nice. Let's see what's incoming.
Incoming message.
Got a video mail about those Tesla supercharger stations we were talking about a couple of days ago. Tell us about them, Steve.
AT&T, this is Steve in St. Paul, Minnesota, and I wanted to comment on the story in the Tesla charging stations and the distance between them and why that might be a problem for some people. Most vehicles never go more than 20 or 30 miles in any given day. And to buy a car just for the once or twice a year that you want to go hundreds of miles is not a great use of a resource. So why not get that great mileage car or that zero mileage car in the electric and rent a vehicle when you need to make those long trips every now and again? It's really, I think, better for everyone, the environment especially, and a great way to take advantage of that great mileage. Thanks. Love the show.
But isn't it nice to have the ability to go hundreds of miles?
It's the driving culture aspect.
It really is.
Don't take away my
It
freedom, my option. I will never take a 600-mile trip, but I might want to.
But I want to have the option to do it.
It's a really reasoned point. I don't know if his numbers are right. Most people don't go past a certain number, but like it
doesn't feel right, but it probably is.
It feels like taking away our freedom to go 600 miles in one sitting. Even if you don't,
take my freedom.
You
I'll
have
take the free
freedom to
energy.
do that.
You have a limited amount of space in which to drive on the North and South Islands, but don't people drive more than 30 miles a day or in New Zealand, Paul?
I mean, it certainly tends to vary, but, I've travelled all around the country and, would travel fair distances some weeks. Other weeks, I would be travelling a lot less than 30 miles a day. So, certainly here there's, we have a lot of cars on the road, as you do in the US, probably more than a lot of other countries. We're used to just being able to jump in the car and head off to a beach or head off to a destination that's a fair distance away. That's for sure.
Now, one of the other problems that we talked about that these superchargers are trying to solve, besides the distance, is the ability to find a place to charge up your car. We got an email regarding
Yeah,
that.
in fact, Bill says, let's put this all into perspective. The availability of gasoline was extremely limited in the early days of the automobile. I've read stories of early pioneers trying to get gasoline at the local general store, and in some cases had to have gasoline sent by rail, by train, before they could even continue their trip. Good point.
But this is not the early
With
days.
electric trains, could we just plug in our cars to the trains?
And just going to hook onto there?
Yeah, and charge them up?
Maybe the Tesla needs a different hook. It needs to be like a hover car. The early days of hover cars, you couldn't find the electrical outlet. But anyway.
I can't wait for the solar car. The
Inductive charging is the answer.
Inductive charging?
Oh, yeah.
As we're driving.
As the road is charging.
Love that.
Good idea.
That's right. That would be perfect. It'd solve all of the issues.
Very cheap infrastructure.
All provided by the government, so nobody has to pay anymore.
Socialism!
I got an email from Torv about the Apple Maps debacle. I don't understand why everyone is so confused by Apple's decision to dump Google Maps in iOS 6. As everyone has noted via their anger over maps, maps and directions are one of the most vital functions of a smartphone today. Even if Apple had convinced Google to provide turn-by-turn in iOS, their current agreement would have ended next year. At that point, who thinks Google would have given Apple even remotely reasonable terms for continued use of their services? If Apple waits until the point they would have had to scramble even more to produce an even lousier product, or even worse, completely lost mapping capabilities if Google decided to pull the plug on them. Then Torv goes on to talk about how Apple would rather use a third-party service like for transit and then control the experience.
Yeah, I thought that was the more compelling part. I mean, even if they knew that this was coming, why not give it one more year and prepare yourself even better? But this idea of saying, look, they can improve it very fast by you having these layers that they're not responsible for, but they still get to control the interface.
Yeah, similar to how Apple does with Siri. They have Open Table and Yelp things coming in, but you never really experienced that. You're just asking an Apple product for whatever third-party service. So it's an interesting idea.
Well, that's it for this episode of Tech News Today. Thanks for submitting stories on our subreddit, technewstoday.reddit.com. Great place to go to let us know what stories you'd like to see us cover. And Paul Spain, thank you for getting up early. I hope you can get back to sleep and catch some winks and get rested. Always love having you on the show. Let folks know about your podcast and where they can find it.
So we're online, New Zealand Tech. The New Zealand Tech Podcast is NZ or NZ, techpodcast.com. And we do a weekly show every Tuesday here in New Zealand. So feel free to have a listen in if you want to find out what's happening in the tech world down under.
Yeah, get another perspective. It's always good to have. That's it for us. You can find us on the web, twit.tv/TNT. You can email us, tnt@twit.tv, or give us a call. Leave us a voicemail, 260-TNT Show. Darren Kitchen is with us tomorrow for our Friday edition of Tech News Today. We'll see you then.